All right, good morning, members. It's always interesting the way the expectant hush falls at just around 10 o'clock. It just depends on which clock you're looking at. I can see that one. I suspect the one above my head shows a different time.
No, it's exactly the same.
Good Lord. Good Lord. What on earth has happened? It unnerves me, Jenny. All right, good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Authority, National Park Authority, on Friday, the 28th of November. It's a lengthy agenda, so let's get on. I've had apologies for absence from Bill Hanley, Kath Potter, Ian Huddleston, Andrew Hart, Simon Thompson and Matt Buckler. Does anyone bring any other apologies? If not, thank you. We take those on board. We move on to minutes of the previous meeting, which have been circulated. Do we ask for any corrections? Yeah. Are there any corrections? Patrick Rody.
Chairman, it's a very small point, but it's on page 13 of or page 7 or 13, I'm not sure what we're talking about. It's the boardroom apprentice item, and it's dealing with their allowances. And I think part 5 of the resolution is not quite clear about whether or not they can claim attendance allowance for the 2 meetings of the planning committee they do, which I think would have been the intention of the meeting at the time. I think it ought to include that in the resolution.
Okay.
And on that basis, I'm happy to move them as a correct record.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we can. I assumed that it was covered by other events, but obviously we will take that into account. And yes, so if there are no further comments or corrections, subject to that amendment, Patrick has moved the minutes. Ginny, thank you. Priestley has seconded them. All members in favour, if you show of hands, please. Any against? Any abstentions? Just the one. I'm aware that for various reasons some members haven't been able to read some of the papers and that therefore in the main abstentions will be not because they're opposed to the recommendation but because they haven't had the information from those papers and I think quite rightly are abstaining from voting with not having read the papers, so thank you for that. I've not been informed of any urgent business, which is item 3, nor of any public participation, which is item 4. We move on to item 5, members' declarations of interest. Are there any disclosable pecuniary or prejudicial interests that members might wish to declare? If not, thank you for that. We move on to item 6, which is Chair's briefing. Which is relatively brief, since the authority on the 26th of the 9th, as ever, I've attended Planning and Resources Committee meetings and planning site visits and meetings of the Local Plan Steering Group and Governance Working Group, plus the Climate Change Training Day and the weekly briefing sessions with our Chief Exec and Deputy Chair. Toward the end of September, I attended and spoke at the launch of the Steel Cotton Rail Trail at Sheffield Station, which was an interesting experience at about 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning in a busy forecourt of the railway station with thousands of other travellers. But information I think was circulated to members for this initiative, which is a really welcome one, enabling people to take the train to various stations along the route between Sheffield and Manchester and then walking on to other stations or indeed walking the whole route. So if members are in need of any exercise and like travelling on the train, I would wholeheartedly recommend it. On the 11th of October, I attended, spoke at and participated in Parishes Day, Peak Park Parishes Day here at the Authority, which focused on local plan development and some associated key issues, some of the key issues which enabled discussion, clarification and feedback to occur to those representatives of parishes who were in attendance. I'd just like, again, as I did on the day, to extend my thanks to the members of staff who were involved, both directly in presenting and indirectly in enabling the day to take place. On the 16th of the 10th, I think as is mentioned in the Chief Exec's report, I participated in the Tourism Charter meeting of key stakeholders which I think was, again, as Phil has noted, was a really positive and inclusive meeting. 20th of the 10th, there was a National Parks England board meeting, and these have occurred time to time during the last few months. That board meeting, amongst other things, addressed recruitment of a new executive director and was addressing various governance issues and some identifying key short-term objectives. I, as chair of this authority, am on the interview panel for the executive director, and the advert is out now with a closing date of the 8th of December, and I can report nervously as a member of the interview panel that 62 applications have already been received, which is going to make life interesting. 22nd of October, I had a short meeting with Gareth Ratcliffe, who's the chair of Baina Brechinioch, what used to be called Brecon Beacons National Park, because he's the next National Parks UK chair. I'm the current chair for this year, and I'll be handing over that responsibility to him. So it was a briefing session for just to bring Gareth up to speed. Then on the 5th of November, an auspicious date, of course, there was the National Parks Partnership AGM, which saw the appointment of a new chair, Sue Albion, and since then a new chief exec has been appointed. It was referred to the process in Phil's report, but since then Kat Hawkins, who was the interim chair, chief exec, I beg your pardon, I keep saying chair, she has been appointed to the full-time post through a process of external interview, so nothing untoward in that internal candidate being successful. 10th of November, there was a meeting to develop with Phil, a meeting to develop the agenda for the National Parks UK meeting, which will occur on the 3rd of December, which included Gareth Ratcliffe to familiarise him with some of the processes. On the 19th, again, as referred to in Phil's report, I attended Mayor Clare's EMCA Peak Partnership Summit at Bakewell Town Hall, at which Phil spoke very well indeed, I would add. It's not just soft soap, it was a good introduction to issues to do with tourism and impacts and the rest in the Peak District. And then yesterday, I don't know whether any other members did, but I know the Deputy Chair also attended the Peak Cluster webinar, which was an interesting introduction to this proposition to extend a pipeline from the cement works in the Peak District out to the Irish Sea and to inject captured carbon dioxide into the depleted gas fields offshore. It was an early introduction, but interesting nevertheless, and there will be further consultations as the process gets underway, which will ultimately, they hope, result in the whole system, if it was approved, going live by 2032. But I think there's been a recording, and there is, I think, an opportunity to engage in further consultation processes. What I might do, if I remember, is include the website so that it's included in the minutes of this meeting, so that if members want to hook into whatever's going on, then that opportunity is available. You could remind me at some time, Sarah, thank you. Excuse me. So that concludes my chair's briefing. Unless there are... Martin Beer.
Just to say, I collected a packet for the Steel Cotton Rail Trail for members to see.
Right. As did I, but I forgot to bring it in. So, Ken Rustage.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With regard to this pipeline, I mean, that's the first I've heard of it, but are you aware of any other plans that may be concurrent with that? I have picked up in some of the other things I'm doing that they might have some ideas. I don't know if it'll ever get to fruition. To imagine that, putting a pipeline from the Peak District right to go under the
I mean, very briefly, the proposal, as very roughly mapped, showed pipeline connections from Hope Valley Cement Works and the other cement works around Buxton essentially heading out, hardly impacting on the Peak District itself, but heading down the west side of the Peak District, out through Cheshire, out through the Wirral, out to the gas fields, out in the North Sea, beyond the Liverpool Basin. Sorry, yeah, beg your pardon, the Irish Sea. It's one of those days already, I'm afraid. It was quite interesting to see. What the webinar did reference as well was an already underway similar process from Cement Works, I think in Flintshire, proposing to take similar carbon dioxide compressed and piped out to the Liverpool Bay gas field, and there were questions, one of which was how easy is it going to be to do this? The subtext, can you actually do it? Which actually came from the chair of the Peak District National Park. But they gave instances of where all the different elements of capture, transport and insertion, if you like, were instanced in various places around Europe and around the world. The difficulty seems to be, or the development is focused on integrating those in order to achieve that process. Time will tell, I would suggest. Janet, would you like to say anything from...
Yeah, no, I attended yesterday and I've spoken to Charlotte Fowler and Ruth Swettenham, who also attended as well, and I'm sure other members did as well. I mean, we could spend all morning trying to sort of unpick this, but I think at some stage, we're obviously going to need to know an awful lot more about it over the next couple of years. And can I suggest that at some stage we have a sort of member briefing or information session so that we can, as members, properly understand the technology, the impacts, on the national park, but also on the region, and to help inform our decision making when we're asked to make a decision or to present a view on this from the national park perspective. Yep. That was the statement. My question is the steel cotton line. I think it's a fantastic idea, and pardon the pun, but is it gaining much traction?
I don't know whether to award points out of 10 for some of these comments. I don't know, is the short answer. I don't know whether anyone else knows, but we can find out. Ruth Swettenham?
Sorry, it wasn't in response to that. It was about the previous thing we were talking about, the peak cluster. Just to say that I found Angela's email to remind us about our need to remain impartial and be very careful about what we as members say. Very timely and very helpful. So thank you, Angela. And if I would urge all members, if they've not read Angela's email, to do so now, very soon, because we do have to remain open-minded and impartial, and in this day and age, anything we say is recorded, quite rightly. So thank you, Angela, and just as a reminder about that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. A timely reminder. Angela had discussed it with me as well before the email went out. So yes, we always have to be careful about what we say in order to avoid prejudicing our position in future. So thank you. The only addition I would make to Janet's comment is that at the moment the draft timetable for this peak cluster process envisages consultation in early 2026, receipt of comments, revision of the proposals, and then a further consultation in late 2026. And yeah, I take Janet's point on board. We would need to receive significant briefing at several points, I would suggest, along the line of this trajectory, or the trajectory of these proposals. Yeah, along the line of the pipeline. Thank you, Janet. Martin Beard.
I also attended the...
Microphone. Martin, microphone.
I also attended the cluster meeting, and what was apparent to me was that the consultation process is very similar to the one we're going through with the local plan. So we can expect basically similar opportunities. So we need to be prepared for them.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you, Martin. Okay, as Janet has said, we could probably spend a good deal of time on that, so we'll move hastily on, but noting both the presence of the proposal and Ruth's timely reminder of our position regarding prejudicial commentary. So, item 7, Chief Exec's report. Unless you have anything to add, Phil?
Yeah, thank you. Really good to be here this morning and really good to see members here today. Thank you for taking the time and the effort to be here. I know you've got all really busy lives, but what we do here is incredibly important. And in writing my report, I just feel incredibly lucky to have this job and to be doing what we do for the National Park. It's so important. And you'll see in the report, the things I do range from trying to influence DEFRA and lobby to working at a regional level with the mayor to then at a much more local level. For example, going out on Abney Moor, which I said I would do in the report and I've now done, was an amazing afternoon with a man who has been managing that moor, the best way he can, longer than I've been alive. And he's up there every day. And it was really fascinating to see his approach. It's not replicable everywhere on every moor. Every moor's different, but it was so good, to spend that time up there. And if members haven't done something like that and want to really get out, you sit in this room a lot, I know, but if you actually also want to get out, and you do it on a bus on the members tour, but if you want that insight, that detail, we can always arrange trips like that to work with some of our partners who dedicate their lives to trying to make this place, the best it can be. So it's a real privilege to do that. Working with DEFRA, there isn't much to update on the report. We're waiting to hear a lot of things from DEFRA, particularly around our funding, around farming schemes and so on. We have had the budget since this report was written, and there don't seem to be massive implications for us, unlike last year when the national insurance increase really hit the budget. So at the moment, we're still kind of really weighing up what the budget means for us, but not that much at the moment. But the thing that is significant that came linked to that is the potential for regional mayors to be able to raise a visitor levy. So we just got yesterday the consultation on that, and we're going to clearly want to respond as an authority. National Parks England are going to want to respond collectively, as each moor is different, each national park's different, the visitor profile and stuff is different. So we're going to need to read through that consultation. It's going to be a really significant one. The main questions, as I see it there, is how would any money collected by people staying in the area benefit the national park? And that that's not clear yet. So that would be my main line of inquiry, as to how we, the authority, the national park, can get some benefit from the fact that 80% of the people visiting are not actually sleeping in a bed in the area that might or might not have a tax associated with it. So there's a lot to think through on that, but that's pretty significant for us. The Peak Park Summit that I spoke at was really interesting as well this week. I think the mayor is very engaging. She's out trying to engage, trying to listen. I'm really grateful for a number of the members who were at the event. It was really good to see parishes, local authorities, community groups there. I hope the mayor was in listening mode, because I thought some really good points got made by everyone around what we need to manage the pressures. And then just finally on the report, it ends on the 75th. That's a really significant event for us. The report is being commissioned with the 4 parks. The partners seem to be excited and interested in doing stuff, parishes, partners and so on, so that's really good. And just for members to note, we're hoping to have our own small kind of celebration, birthday party if you like, here next summer, so take a note of that date in the report there. And I know we've got a busy agenda, so I'll leave it there, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Any comments or questions? Ginny Priestley.
Thank you. I wanted to commend Phil for not just his report, but the way he gets out and talks to everybody and engages with all the different groups on our behalf. So thank you for that. I was really excited to see the 75th anniversary preparations. Andrew McCloy is an excellent choice because he's got knowledge of the whole of the national parks, having been chair of National Parks England for 2 years, I think. And it's a wonderful way for us to actually really communicate out to everybody what our national park is all about, or what national parks are all about. But in these days of constraints with money, I might take it that we don't have a budget, so it'll be fairly cost neutral, the celebrations of the 75th.
Yes, the 4 national parks, we've all chipped in to fund the report, so that's a relatively small amount. What partners do, hopefully, won't cost us anything. Some of the stuff we do doesn't cost anything, like the branding that we'll introduce. That will be visibly a mark and allow people to understand, but it won't cost anything really. We might try and brand the vehicles for the 75th year. There'll be a small cost in just putting the stickers on there. Some of the merchandise we're going to be selling is cost neutral because it will cover the costs. The calendar that we've done, the 75th anniversary calendar that's in the gift shop or the National Park Centres at the moment. And there'll be a very small budget for some refreshments, basically, for the volunteers and the staff to come together in the summer. So there's no set budget, but it will be, in the range of a few £1,000s we'll spend on it. From existing funds, yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Ken Rustich.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to Phil's exposition, the MERS could raise a levy, of people visiting the national park. I mean, I did pick something up that in my area in GM that the Mayor, Andy Burnham, might have a tourist levy, for people going, presumably, I mean, not just the city centre, but elsewhere. But my question really is, how would they envisage that you actually collect that levy? I mean, imagine in my area, all of the Peak District, are they going to say someone up to the car park in Chew Valley and went up on Saddleworth Moor? Are they going to? I mean, it just seems to envisage, all the people out of the area. And how do you envisage that working specifically for the Peak District? Thank you.
Well, as I understand it, I haven't read the full consultation yet, but it's essentially a bed tax. So it's a tax on overnight stays, and it would be collected as elsewhere. So the accommodation provider would kind of add it on and have to send it in to the mayor. It would be something like that. So that's a very simple and easy way of doing it. Now, I know a lot of the hospitality industry don't like it because they see tourist visitors already being heavily taxed in this country. Our issue here, as I said, is that most of the people visiting the national park are not staying in a bed in the national park. So it's going to be, if it's introduced, it's then going to be how the mayor spends the money raised. And if you think we've actually got 4 mayoral authorities surrounding us, and people in all 4 of those authorities will be visiting, it's called a tourist tax, if you like, for short, and they will be tourists visiting the national park. But are the 4 mayors going to get together and collectively take up some of that to help us with the management issues from those visitors?
So simply, if I may, Chair, if someone came to Bakewell and then stayed in the Rutland Arms overnight, there'd be a slice, and that would then go into the pot. But then all the other mayors maybe have to get together to equalise it. Yeah.
So if you're staying in the Rutland Arms and this is introduced, then that money would go to the East Midlands Mayor to do with it what they want. We don't know yet what they would want to do or how they would spend it. That all has to be kind of worked out. But it's more the fact that all the people staying in all the places outside the national park, would that money come to support us? Because most of them are spending some time using the services and the things that we need money for to support and manage.
I think it's very early days yet, Ken. I think until we see the consultation proper, then we've no idea. Janet Dugdale.
Yeah. Phil, thank you ever so much for your report. As Ginny says, it's fabulous you're getting out and about as informed expert ambassador on our behalf. In terms of the tourist tax, I just hope it's not going to, the cost of administering it isn't going to be higher than the money that actually comes in, but that's not for us to worry about at the moment. It's early days, as you say. Can I just say congratulations on the partnership with the Buxton International Festival next year. I think that's going to be a game changer in terms of publicity and awareness of the national parks and the 75th anniversary. And I suspect it's cost neutral to do that, or we'll get real benefit from that in terms of raising awareness. And the other thing I was going to say is, does the 75th anniversary give us opportunities to work with the foundation to raise awareness for fundraising purposes?
Yeah, we are actively having that conversation with the foundation as to how we celebrate and how we raise money and what it can be used for. So that's a very strong line of trying to engage public support. I think the questions are, how do we do that? How do you collect money from visitors, a lot of whom would like to support us? What's the best way of collecting that?
Okay, thank you, Janet. Charlotte Farrell.
Thanks. It was just about the tourism engagement. I just wondered, to what extent people who are affected by tourism were involved, because we get so much pushback from parish councils, and it would be good to know that it wasn't just the tourist operators there. I just wondered.
Well, anyone can respond to the consultation that's just come out on it. As it's a proposal to give mayors the power to do it. I think the other bit of lobbying will be how we all collectively...
No, I meant that. You said you had a partner workshop for tourism engagement.
Sorry.
I meant that.
Yeah. So with that was at a kind of strategic partner level. So the local authority type partners who have really got the levers and the powers to try and bring in some of the major solutions. There's another level of engagement that we will need to do with more of the communities and the people affected. So it's not that that's being ignored or forgotten, it's just that first workshop brought together those kind of county, district authorities and the mayoral authorities and so on in that first workshop.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. If there are no further comments or questions, thank you, members, and thanks, Phil, for that executive report. We move on to the decision-making part of the agenda. Item 8, the Carbon Management Progress Report. Matt Buckler is here, author of the report. I said it's one of those days. I do beg your pardon, Matt, and Matt. Any additions, anything, updates?
No updates. I can do a quick introduction if I'll very quickly.
Very quickly, then, yeah.
Yeah. So this is our annual carbon management plan report. As usual, it focuses on our operational emissions, and they're set out in the report. We've also got an extra appendix this year looking at our land-based emissions. So we can welcome Faith Johnson, who from EQM, who many of you will be familiar with, who has written the appendix, or the report and appendix 2 around our land-based emissions. I think that's a really valuable tool, particularly as we go forward, looking at our estate management plans, and the information in there will be used to kind of inform that thinking.
Okay. Right, thank you, Matt. Members, any comments or questions regarding the report? Patrick Brady.
This is just to show my ignorance, Chairman. I don't really fully understand the topic, but when we're measuring the carbon impact of what we do, does it only apply to sort of, as it were, what happens on our land, or are we taking on board things that might actually that we do that actually might cause carbon to arise off-site, as it were? I haven't. The thing that's caught my mind is we have an application before the next planning committee. Not that the question arises in the context of planning, but it's to extend a car park in the middle of somewhere over there. That's going to attract more cars. That's therefore going to attract more carbon impact, I'm going to guess. Does that get taken into account in the calculations that we do in the kind of report we've got in front of us now? Do you understand the question?
Oh, yeah, I understand it. Thank you, Patrick. Matt, I'll pass that one on to you.
No, I mean, we follow the government guidance on carbon reporting, which sets out, as it is within the report, a number of scopes of emissions, and that's done to ensure kind of consistency nationally, so that these sort of emissions aren't double reported. So, we do, within scope 2 and 3 emissions, for instance, report on some emissions that are off-site, so it may be electricity generation, production of waste and so on, but we wouldn't report as far as, visitors to our sites. There are some scope 3 emissions we want to look at, such as the goods and services we buy, that we're kind of currently looking at ways we can gather that data, basically.
Okay. I hope that helps, Patrick.
I'm sure when I've thought about it, Chairman, I have another question to follow that, but I don't know yet.
Doubtless. We'll look forward to it. Janet Dugdale.
Yeah, Matt and Faith, thank you for your reports. A couple of questions. First of all, I'm assuming from now on we're not going to see any step change reductions going forward in scope 1, 2 or 3, that the sort of the big lumpy bits we've dealt with. So it's just taking bits out as we can, I assume. My main question relates actually to the peak carbon tool, which I thought was great, and it's fantastic. We're now measuring carbon based on land use. It looks like obviously a lot of the carbon emission, and to have the storage as well as the emissions, it looks like a lot of our emissions relate to basically animals on the land. And I assume quite a lot of this land is land that we have tenanted one way or another. So first question is, are we going to be looking at our tenancy agreements going forward and the sort of farming we are going to be encouraging or allowing on our tenanted properties? And the second is, we have this this tool, this information, are we benchmarking it against other managed estates, whether it's other national parks or big estates like Chatsworth or estates that the National Trust own and things like that, so we can learn from best practice elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, in answer to your first question, I hope this will be factored into tenancy agreements, but it's part of the picture. I think tenancy agreements currently very much focus on conservation, nature. Certainly the ones we're entering into now, and have done for some time. So this is going to be part of the picture. It's not necessarily the be all and end all of it. And we've got a lot of different competing pressures, and one of those is the production of food. The farms have to be productive, so it's interesting. That leads you on to the next point about benchmarking in terms of how we look against other estates. I don't think we have done that. I'm not aware of any other estates having done this level of detail, but Faith can probably answer that better than me.
So we have actually done through FIPL, the Environmental Quality Mark Community Interest Company have done, funded by FIPL applications, a little study with 5 National Trust farmers. There was also Sustainable Hayfield did 7 farmers, and Peakland Environmental Farmers did 5 too. So each one of those farmers we do that with, there's a question at the beginning of the tool saying, are you happy for your information to be shared for benchmarking purposes by the National Park Authority? And I always say to them, they've never asked me to do this, but they may at some point in the future. So would your anonymised data, would you be happy if your anonymised data be used for benchmarking purposes? And largely they say yes. So we could, and equally everyone who's ever filled that tool out with us has been asked that question. So there is potential for benchmarking.
Okay, thanks, Faith. Simon Geeky, I just wanted to add a thing too.
Just very briefly to follow up what Faith and Matt just said, there's interest at the National Park Management Plan partner level in that sort of benchmarking exercise as well. Chatsworth Estate have mentioned specifically the same issues that we have in terms of a lot of emissions from their tenanted farms. So I think with Faith and Matt, we can put that into our heads for the conversations as we move to the next management plan.
Yeah, I think note the point that has been made by my membership. Okay, thank you. Rachel Bennett.
Hi, yeah, thank you. There's two things I wanted to sort of comment on. So I think the first, Janet basically has covered. So that's great. So thanks for that. That was just about, looking at where we've looked at the tenanted estate. So I think you've already answered that, so that's fine. My second is just a sort of follow up from Patrick's comment. So my understanding is this report is about the authority's own carbon rather than what's related to the wider National Park Management Plan, which is about the whole carbon emissions from the whole of the national park. So that's how I've read this. So I just wanted to make sure that that's correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But of course, we, through our management plan, we are seeking to get to net zero by 2050 for the whole of the national park, but that'll be through a different reporting process.
Yes, and that's something that the strategy and performance team are looking at on that wider basis.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Rachel. Charles Greaves.
Thanks, Chair. On 3.3 on page 19, and it straddles page 20, it says there's a few areas that we're still looking to incorporate, but we've not been possible to do so yet. Do you know when that's going to be?
Sorry, I'm just finding the part in the report. It's something we have hoped to have looked at before now. It's quite onerous in terms of the amount of time that's needed to put in to gather that information. I'd like to be able to, report on those emissions this time next year. But I think I'd hope that last year as well. And it's just having the resource to be able to gather that information really. So. Hopefully this time next year we'll report on, at least some of those, if not all of them.
And then on page 27, where we're talking about the Warslow estate, it says that there's 4 of the 12 farms tenancies are held under Agricultural Holding Act tenancies. And that presents difficulties perhaps with changing methods and techniques, but is that likely to change in the near future, any of those tenancies, or is the scope to perhaps change the approach with the tenants to see if there's anything that can be done?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I say, this information will feed into our estate management plan for Warslow, which will then go on to inform what we kind of want from the farmers. Those old tenancies are generally, I think with the exception of one, are not successional. So, just by the nature of them, that all those farmers are probably coming up to a kind of retirement sort of age. So, there'll be opportunities when they're renewed. And, I think, again, this sort of information we need when we're looking forward into what the estate might look like. This information will be fed into that.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Ginny Priestley.
Thank you, Chair. It's more a comment, really, for having listened to everybody's points and questions. I would just make the point that it seems crazy to be not measuring the carbon emissions from all the vehicles that come into the park and the cars parking in our car parks, and not measuring that against food production. So I would just make that point. Carbon emissions from farming is food production, whereas people driving their cars in and parking is a different thing. It's leisure.
Janet, please do.
Sorry. We've sort of looked at all of that. The Climate Change Working Group spent some time looking at different approaches to measuring carbon emissions. What Matt's providing here, what the authority is providing, is the report. The Carbon Management Plan is based on the organisation itself. You're talking about the place. Work has been done on that over the years using a different approach called the consumption-based approach, where we did look at visitors, we looked at use of energy and all sorts of things, residents, visitors, and things like that. That work has been done and looked at, and I think it went through the Resources Committee and has certainly been dealt with through the Climate Change Working Group, which is probably about 3 years ago now. And that did inform the aims and objectives against climate change in the management plan, and has helped drive some of the objectives within the management plan. But it's just not part of this report, which is just for the organisation. Sorry.
No, but thanks for the background clarification. Hope that helps. Okay. Nick Adams.
Thank you. Yeah, pleased to hear the acknowledgement of food production, the importance of that. On benchmarking, the carbon, trying to account for carbon, there are issues with these models that they use. I think when we've done them on farms, depending which one you use, you get completely different answers and very different answers. There also is the issue of ruminants. I presume all our farms are ruminant-based, and it's how you account for ruminant emissions. And it's very contentious as to which methodology that you use. I think it's GWP 100 and GWP star. So obviously ruminants are a natural phenomenon, if you like, or part of nature, and methane is a part of a natural process, a natural cycle. So certainly in my experience we've done this even when I put in a steady state situation of a all singing, all dancing, regenerative, very cuddly farm, the ruminant emissions make it look very bad. And the logic of the conclusion of that is then you put high-rise pig farms up and grow crops rather than having beautiful countryside. So that's to be looked at, the ruminants. And then sequestering carbon. A lot of the models don't properly account for sequestering carbon and into your soil and whether they measure organic matter. And soil science would probably know more about what goes on the moon than in our soils. It's really, there is a lot of work going into it, but how soils interact and how humus is formed and how you can create very stable long-term humus in soils that will lock up carbon, which does come back to farm management. I think we've talked about earlier how farms are being encouraged to adopt more regenerative methods of farming, which then make their farms more resilient, because the more carbon and humus in your soil, the more resilient it is to extremes of climate, whether it's rain or drought. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nick, for those comments. Any quick rejoinder, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I'll hand over to Faith to address the technical issues, but I think one of the things to point out is that, the figure we're getting at the end of this isn't necessarily real. It's not definitely our emissions from land, but it's a tool to help us inform how we manage that land. So it doesn't really matter if it's not absolutely accurate. But I don't, do you have anything to add to?
They're all really excellent points. And I would make the point that all of the carbon footprints that I've done in the Peak District, including Derbyshire Wildlife Trust So the ruminants is the highest figure because we are a beef and sheep farming area. And your point there about, this is food production. We don't all need to go on foreign holidays, but we do need food. So there will always be, obviously it's an ethical point as to whether or not you approve of eating animals, but if we think there's going to be food production in terms of beef and sheep in the world, grass-fed highland, upland beef and sheep is going to be a much more ethically and environmentally sensitive way of producing it, and we do that here. In terms of the different tools, there was a DEFRA report that showed the discrepancies between the different tools, and the three main players now are exchanging data and bringing their tools closer together. And I've recently done some work for a landscape recovery project comparing all the different tools, and actually they're roughly the same order of magnitude for the livestock. So it's not God's truth. I always say this to people doing it. It's a tool by which we understand better, and the peat carbon tool shows livestock roughly the same order of magnitude as all the other major tools. But what it also does is show stored carbon, which is not very, I think it's only Sandy tool that does that. And that's why it's so great that we have, as an authority, you have your own tool, which was developed for the uplands, for the peat district, which shows stored carbon, which is absolutely crucial part of the picture. In this area where essentially your farmers are stewards of this stored carbon, the way they manage the land, the way they run livestock across the land, it protects that carbon if it's done well and managed through other prescriptions about conserving wildlife and having a light touch essentially on the land. So I think they're all excellent points, but hopefully the way that we've done this carbon footprinting has addressed them.
Okay.
Just go back. The important thing. The important thing is that carbon tools aren't used as a stick to beat ruminant production with, because it is ruminants that we need to manage these landscapes. Thank you.
I think the point's taken, Nick. As has been said, these are indicative figures which are helping us progress towards our objectives. Yep. Okay. Bring this one to a conclusion after Mandy. Mandy Martin has spoken.
Thank you. Most of my points have already been raised, but I just wanted to throw in from a benchmarking point of view, Holcombe Hall Estate, which isn't as big or as complex as here, has done a lot of work to be carbon neutral, balancing nature, tourism and farming, and they could be a good source of best practice or benchmarking to look at.
Okay, thanks for that, Mandy. Okay, members, we have a recommendation. It's on the screen behind me, as well as on your paperwork. Do I have a mover for that recommendation, please? Janet Dugdale, thank you. Seconder? Andy Nash. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Just two. Thank you, members. We can move on to agenda. Thank you, Matt. Agenda item 9 now. Is Emmett, are you speaking to this one? And Simon. Okay, members, we now have agenda item 9, the Authority Plan Mid-Year Report, Decile 5. Emmett, are there any updates you wish to make? In that case, members, there are no updates to the report. Are there any comments or questions that members wish to make? Andy Nash.
Thanks for the report. Just like to ask about risk E in the delivery section. It's the injury and loss of life due to property damage. It's rated as high impact and high probability, and we're sort of halfway through the 5-year cycle. Do we have to accept that's always going to be red, or can we do something to bring it down?
Thank you. Yes, so I spoke to the head of assets and enterprise about this when we did the updates, and essentially the conversation we had was that yes, it is always going to remain a high risk, and this is probably one of the most high risk elements of our estate, really, trees and other associated risks around woodlands. However, we manage that risk quite effectively at present in terms of having surveying cycles that are followed and regularly updated. So the agreement was that whilst it is a very high risk and consistently remains a high risk, the management of that is appropriate, as kind of discussed with the managing officer.
Yeah, indeed.
Thanks for that, that's really helpful. Do we do a prioritisation, so we approach the trees, say by public footpaths and bridleways and property, before we do in a forest clearance?
One would hope.
Yes, we do, Andy.
Okay, I think brief and to the point, but positive nevertheless. Are there any other comments or questions? Janet Dugdale.
Yeah, Andy got in with a question on trees that I was going to ask, but can I ask about planning? And it says that we've had 120 breaches resolved following investigation per year. Great, fantastic. What percentage is that of total breaches?
So who's the maths supremo? Simon?
I think we'll have to get back to you on that one, Janet.
No, I'm asking because it sounds like a lot, but is it 5% or 80% or, you know, that context is needed to understand how well that is doing.
Can I perhaps help a little bit there, Chairman? I'm not sure that it's a figure that's easy to calculate, actually, because planning complaints come in over a period of many years. I think some of the oldest on the lists are still in the 1900s. So if you solve 120 in 1 year, then you don't know from what year those are, and you don't know what you're comparing it with as a percentage. I think a more useful set of figures is actually the numbers coming in and out. That's one thing which is regularly reported to the Planning Committee. And the other one, which the Planning Committee has now asked for, is better information about what's happening when enforcement notices actually come into being, so that you can work out whether they're being acted on or not. But I don't think you can quite answer the question in the way that Janet's asked it.
Sure, I think it's a cogent response, Patrick. I mean, certainly it's a case. It's not unusual to have reported to Planning Committee that 120 issues have been resolved, but 120 more have come in. So the total hasn't changed, but there's been an awful lot of work done. So I quite see the...
It's actually about a quarter of what comes in a year, but that doesn't help you very much.
No. I think it's a valid point.
It's just some sense of scale of it, whether it's flow or absolute number or something like that. I just don't get any feel for whether 120 breaches resolved a year is good or bad, or whether some of them are, you know, come in that year or have been there.
It's good in the sense that it's more than the past.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, but I think officers take on board the point and see what can be done, perhaps to help. Patrick Brady.
Are we dealing with the corporate risk as well as the progress plan at the same time, Chairman?
I'm not.
Mine's on the corporate risk register rather than the progress plan report.
Yeah, it's part of the same report.
Yeah, it's the last item actually, which is on page 63 of the agenda and 11 of this report. This came up actually at the last meeting in the context of the local plan review, and it's the entry. It's number 7 on page 10, and then then on to page 11. And it's described as the influence of user management in the national park. And then it, I think probably correctly in the second column, explains a number of difficulties we have, which I get. And then it comes on to the local plan in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th column. And it starts talking about the local plan review about developing policy to support development which increases capacity. And I've not seen that as an explanation of what the local plan is and what the local plan policy or the draft local plan policies are. And I'm not quite sure why that becomes a risk when, as far as I know, we've never set ourselves any sort of target of increasing capacity. And I think we're beginning to lose sight a bit here of what the management plan talks about. Because what the management plan talks about, and it's touched upon in different parts of this report, is actually about the problems that are caused by visitors and too many visitors and so on and so forth. It talks about them in positive as well as negative ways, but it does talk about it. And it seeks something called area management plans. And it also seeks some sort of transport strategy to help with the visitor number things. And I think we're getting slightly diverted from what the management plan says by sort of honing this down onto visitor hubs and development. And where I think the danger is here is that if we limit it to a sort of issue about how we develop visitor hubs, we're going to lose sight of the bigger picture. And for heaven's sake, this year, haven't we seen the need for decent area management policies in areas like Castleton and the surrounding area? That's what we need to be looking for. And I think we're distracting ourselves. Now, the local plan group is going to have to look at this, but it can't look at it easily, except in the context of what we as an authority are trying to do more widely. And what the management plan says about area management quite closely allies with the sort of message I was getting out of the debate on Parishes Day, which was not about developing visitors' hubs, it was about trying to manage things in a better way. And I'm a bit worried about the way this is going, and I hope we can pull it together in a way which is more coherent.
Well, I hope officers have heard you comment. I think probably we're in a position where brevity is has influenced how things have been written. Yes, I think my recollection of what came to local plan working group and part of the local plan review was looking at development that was aimed at managing those pressures rather than increasing capacity necessarily. That might be one of the tools, but not necessarily the be-all and end-all. So I think that's something that perhaps needs to be taken away and just look at the semantics and the overall context rather than focusing directly on that one developmental issue.
Yes, because I think we're in danger of being incoherent if we're not very careful. We've got to continue through the the management plan message through into the local plan.
Indeed, thank you. Hannah Coran.
Yeah, thank you for the digital report. I thought it was really well presented and easy to understand. I just wanted to check my understanding on one point of it, because within the digital progress plan, in section 3.2 of the agenda item, it sounds as though it is amber rated, and it's also amber rag rated on the main section of objective B, but on the top bar it was green. So I just wanted to understand the difference between those two.
Now, who's going to handle that hot potato?
Can I just check which objective?
Microphone.
Objective B, sorry.
Yeah. Microphone's off. Could we have Patrick? Could you put your microphone off?
Oh, I beg
please?
your pardon.
Thank you.
So, yes, if I remember correctly, I had a conversation with the head of landscape and engagement, who's responsible for reporting against this target. And the reason that the action, we decided to rate that as amber, essentially because it relates to the maintenance of footpaths requires funding that I think there is. I can't remember exactly what funding stream it is, so I can go away and check that. But there was some question mark as to what timeline that was going to be received over that was going to support some of this work. However, it was predicted that that would be received by the end of this annual reporting cycle. So whilst the action was rated as amber for this decile, this first half of the year, it was believed that that action was going to be achieved by the end of the year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Mandy Martin. I thought you raised your hand. I beg your pardon. In that case, I'm seeing things as well as hearing things. If there are no further comments or questions, members, we have a recommendation. That's 2 recommendations. Do I have a mover for those recommendations? Charles Greaves, thank you, and the seconder. Ken Rustage, thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. We can move on to agenda item 10. Thank you, Emmett and Simon. Move on to agenda item 10, in that case, the annual compliance report. And Angela Edwards, do you have any additional comments to make?
No updates. There's been no findings of maladministration against the authority, and the complaints data demonstrates a healthy culture, with officers trying to make improvements even when there's no findings of fault. That's all I have to say about it.
Thank you. That's extremely reassuring. Do members have any comments or questions of Angela? If not, we have, beg your pardon, Mandy Martin, this time.
Thank you. This time, you predicted it coming up, that's what it was.
Yeah, it's anticipation.
I was just curious about how the analysis of complaints over time, because it gives the in-year numbers, but I can't see how that tracks over the years. Just to get a bit of context and understand if it's good, bad or indifferent.
So there is at the bottom of appendix, I'm sorry, I forget which appendix it is. At the bottom of appendix 2, it does show the trends over the last 3 years. So we do track that.
Page number? Page 78. Page 78.
Thank you.
Okay, that's okay. You're forgiven this time. Right. Agenda item 11, wretched technology. Okay, we have. Was it 10? Oh yeah. Okay, yep. I was getting ahead of myself with the recommendations and reports. So we have recommendation before us for agenda item 10. Have a mover, Charles Greaves, thank you. Ruth Swetnam seconded. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you, members. Report has been adopted. Move on to agenda item 11, in that case, the annual governance statement. And again, that's Angela. So any updates?
No updates. This is a statutory duty that the authority has to comply with to produce the annual governance statement. Annually, we have to review our effectiveness of our governance arrangements. That's been done. It's been audited with no issues. So.
Yep, which again is jolly good news. So any comments or questions, members? Janet Dugdale.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this. I'm pleased to hear it's audited. Who's it audited by? Is it audited externally, or is it just us marking our own homework?
It's the external auditor.
Thank you very much. And secondly, can I ask about timelines for progress on the governance working group for the new standing orders constitution? When are we going to be, as members, seeing that for approval?
The next governance working group is, I forget the exact date, but it's in January. And at that time, we are taking back a redraft of the contract procedure rules and also the financial procedure rules for the group to consider. And then once the group have considered that, depending on what the outcome of that consideration is, we'll look to then bring that once we're ready to adopt it to the next authority meeting after that. So we're aiming for February, but of course it all depends upon what comes out of that governance review working group. But it is, we had to pause for a while, but it's now back on track, and officers have all commented on it by the
21st of November. So it's all progressing well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? If not, we have the recommendations before us. Can I have a mover for those recommendations, please? Mandy Martin, thank you. A seconder? Rachel Bennett, thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Just one abstention on this occasion. So thank you, members. We move on to agenda item 12. In that case, thank you, Angela, for your input. The internal audit block report. And Sinead will be coming forward. While Sinead's moving down the path, just to note that the title of the paper, Internal Audit Report, Block 1, it should be, rather than Block 2, as in the title of the report, just to get ahead of Sinead on this occasion. In that case, Sinead, any updates to the report?
No updates. Both reports have come in at the highest assurance level, substantial assurance, and all the agreed actions and responsible officers have been agreed, and the timelines have been agreed. And just to let members know, those timelines are agreed by the authority, not internal audit, because it obviously has to be managed within our day-to-day job as well. So any dates that you'll see there, those responsible officers will have agreed those dates, and they can manage within their own workload.
Okay, thank you, Sinead. Any comments or questions of Sinead members on this internal audit report? Ginny Priestley.
I'm not sure if it's the is page 115 part of this report?
I think so, yep.
Yes. I just wanted to understand a little bit more about the run books and training, which is a significant risk highlighted.
Yeah, we have David McMahon in the room, the IT manager, so he will be best placed to answer any IT-related questions.
Yep. We'll just wait for David to come to a seat where there's a microphone.
Yeah, so those concerns were recognised within the team, and they were already a piece of work that was in progress. So since the audit, a number of the run books have been completed, and we've also completed a series of some internal training as well, going through those books. That work will carry on and continue. It'll be part of our business as usual, and it's something that we were grateful that the audit picked up and helped give us a little nudge in the right direction. So, yeah.
Thanks, David. It's always useful to be nudged, I think. Charles Greaves.
Thanks, Chair. So mine relates to pages 104, 106, and it's the comments regarding the service risk register. So it's not for you, David. Right? So the question with that is what actions are being taken, and will we be using the new template for service risk?
Are members privy to seeing the business continuity plan?
No, it's not on IT.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say the IT elements have all been covered and updated, and that's all been added as.
That's not for me. Yep. No, you stay there just in case. But he was getting his defence in first, Charles. It's okay. Sinead, are you going to deal with this one?
No, Simon, if you wouldn't mind picking that question up, thanks.
So let's have a look. It's on page 104, and there's the comment regarding the corporate risk register and the new templates being adequate, but a concern regarding the service risk registers and whether or not they're going to properly integrate, and whether or not they'll be using the new template, and what risk training and guidance is going to be given to officers. So as those risk registers are pushed down, are they going to are they going to match up? Okay.
Yeah. So the new structure that we're working on pulls through risk brings risk down and pulls corporate risk down into action within service planning, and then allows escalation up of service level risks. So yeah, there's a whole process which Emmett's been working on, particularly around getting that embedded into the system. So as we go forward into the next service planning phase, there'll be a risk register associated with the service plan, which allows us to escalate up, and training associated with using that and doing that at the different levels.
And can I just now move to the recommendations that are on page 120? So it just struck me that perhaps there ought to have been another recommendation, which was about management implementing the recommendations and actions in response to the issues raised, and there's nothing in there.
Mm-hmm. Simon, Sinead?
So it's all happening.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking like that.
So is it actually needed, Charles, given the what's in the report and what's in the recommendation? It would be my only question of Sinead or Simon.
The follow-up and the recommendations is all managed on the internal auditor side. So any of the follow-up responses and the dates of the deadlines that are given, we then have to bring that back to internal audit to show that we have implemented it, or discuss with them why we haven't implemented it, or ask for an extension if that's the case.
Mm.
So we wouldn't normally bring that recommendation to members.
So I wouldn't necessarily mean it to members. It's just I was thinking more along the. I was looking at along the lines of one of the recommendations would be to direct officers to do that.
Well, isn't that under the proposed actions element of the recommendation?
Yeah.
That's how we perceive it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's how it's perceived. Ken?
Yeah,
Ken
sorry,
Richardson, quickly.
I'm confused because you did say page 120. Recommendations, that's the next element. We ain't got there yet, have we?
Do you want an external audit, Charles? I'm afraid.
Sorry.
Yep. In that case, relax, everyone. Okay. Sorry, Charles, but this anticipatory element seems to be spreading, Mandy. Okay. No worries. I have Ruth Swetnam and then Janet Dugdale.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for David. Thank you. Just following up from Ginny highlighting this is our, there's a significant thing highlighted here. I don't understand what a run book is. Could you please just define for us what we're talking about here? Thank you.
So the NCSC recommend that we should have in place written down and tested procedures to cover different types of incidences. So in the IT world, it might be if you have a malware outbreak or an officer releases data to try to be malicious, the sorts of things that you see in the news. So it's covering off and trying to write down, document what the procedures are, but then also testing those and making sure that you're ready. So there's a mantra that they say about rising to training, and it's just to make sure that you have that training in place and that procedure there. So it's very much there with our suppliers and our infrastructure and everything that we have there. All of that's been tested, but then it came down to the resource and the time spent within the IT team to make sure that those processes and systems were in place, and that's the time that I've carved out that we've started delivering on that work now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very pleased to hear that. I mean, obviously, IT, malware, hacking risks are significant for public bodies, so great to see that that's actually being addressed. Am I right to think it's kind of like having standard operating procedures almost, that, okay, we get hacked, what is the first thing we have to do immediately?
Yes, so like a standard operating procedure for recovery and restoration of services.
Thank you. Clarity enhanced. Janet Dugdale.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. I was too frightened to show my ignorance to ask that, but two things. One on the IT side of things is that this is a public document, and I'm really pleased to hear that a lot of progress has been made in mitigating this significant risk prior to it being released as a public document, particularly IT type work, where we don't want to be publicising where there might be weaknesses, and I think that's just something to bear in mind in the future. The second's on actually the risk register, and I really welcome new risk register, a more nuanced one. But can I ask that we as members also get trained in it so that we understand it and can contribute to decision making appropriately when the time comes to review it?
Yeah, thanks for that point, Janet. I assume that can be taken on board, Simon, Sinead? Yep. Okay, thank you. If there are no further comments or questions, we have a recommendation. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Andy Nash, thank you. Seconder? Anyone wish to say? Ruth Swetnam, thank you. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? 2 on this occasion. Thank you, members. We move on. Thank you, David, Sinead and Simon. Sinead stays in place for the next agenda item, which is external audit. We also have Jenny Norman from our auditors at Forvis Mazars. I'll be taking her seat a moment. Thank you, Jenny. Sinead, are there any updates to this report?
Thanks, Chair. The only update is there was, we were still waiting on a pension update when this report was circulated. Pleased to say that pension update came through yesterday. After a lot of chasing, the number has moved only by 30k in 17 million, so it's immaterial. So we will not be making any further changes to the pension numbers.
Which is reassuring itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Given the...
I think Jenny is going to just give a quick summary of the
I was going to ask
audit.
Jenny to
no
do
problem.
a quick summary.
I'll give a very brief overview of the reports that we're presenting. I'm very pleased to be able to present these reports to you. I wanted to say this is the earliest that we have been able to bring an audit completion report to this authority for many years. So we are obviously it's obviously working, trying to bring back in and meet these deadlines. The deadline is actually February, so we're well ahead of that. So her main headlines, 2 clean reports. So we have our audit completion report, which is about our main financial statements audit. We then have a separate report, which is here in draft form, the auditor's annual report, which contains our commentary and conclusions on our value for money work, which is a separate piece of work that we do, which is a lesser assurance than main financial statements audit, but takes a more holistic view of arrangements at the authority. There are some control recommendations that we have raised, but none of these are judged to be significant. You may remember that there was one significant control deficiency raised in the prior year. It's also mentioned in the report. We consider this has been satisfactorily addressed. There are some unadjusted and adjusted misstatements, and including disclosure misstatements, which we have included in the report, but none of these are considered to be material, and we've had the full cooperation of management throughout. Welcome any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, members, we've heard both from Sinead and from Jenny. Are there any comments or questions you have on this item, this statement of accounts? It's not mandatory. Ruth Swetnam.
Just to make a comment, I'd like it noted that it's great to see that these reports are so early. So
indeed.
Congratulations to Sinead and the team responsible for doing that. So I'd just like that noted. Thank you.
And I think for colleagues at Mazars.
Yeah, of course.
It's
Thank you.
The provision of the data obviously enables, but I think, yes, I would echo that as welcome the speed with which this has been produced. Janet Dugdale.
Thank you to both of you for the comprehensiveness of these reports. I know they take a lot of work to put in place. I've just got a question about the asset value of the pensions on page 127 of the pack. It says that the net position as 31st of March 2025 shows an asset of, this is to do with the pension, of 17.1 million, an increase of 9.2 million compared to the asset of 7.9 million for the previous year. Where are we investing this? I'd really like to know.
With Derbyshire County Council?
Well, Derbyshire County Council manage our pensions on behalf of Peak District National Park, so I would need to liaise with them to get that.
No, I mean, that just seems like a huge increase.
Yeah. It's
way
been seen
above
across the board.
any market changes we've been seeing. And I suppose we don't know whether it's in equities or bonds or where
Yeah,
it is.
it's very specialised, obviously, and it's managed within DCC and their actuaries, so we don't get that. Well,
Okay.
there is a page that will give in the statement of financial accounts. There is a page that gives
Yeah, there's note 32 that
a
goes on to look
summary
at it,
of
but it doesn't say
that's the
why
level.
they've had such a cracking year in terms of the investment value. I just wondered if you knew. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
The kind of high level answer I've been given is just fluctuation in asset
Okay.
values.
Yeah.
Good.
And from my...
It's a big fluctuation.
Indeed, and from my memory, which unfortunately spans quite a long time now, the actuarial differences, the pension fund can move huge amounts, and we've always been advised that, not exactly using these words, but we don't need to worry our pretty little heads about it, because it is a kind of seasonal flow of changes in value. And these things seem to iron themselves out over time. That's not to mean that we should be complacent. We need to note it, but we don't, I think, need to put major concern in that direction.
So we don't actually recognise the asset in our accounts. There's a financial technical reason why we have to take it out. So in the accounts, I think we've only recognised about $500,000, because if we were to wind up tomorrow, we wouldn't be able to realise those gains. They're not real. They're just really pretty numbers that we'll never be able to get our hands on.
Okay. Thanks, Janet. Nice try, but better luck next time. Any other comments? Charles Greaves.
Yeah, sorry, it's just to return to the point that I'd mistakenly...
Yeah, I was going to say you did have a
bit
question.
too soon.
Yes.
So I guess this relates to possibly more recommendation 3. So it's about the findings and issues within that audit completion report, and there's mitigation from management. But our recommendation is just to consider and note it. It seems rather passive, and I wonder whether or not there should be something a bit more meatier in terms of officers providing a follow-up report to confirm that they've covered off those mitigating actions.
Okay, I'll be advised by officers on that one, or by Jenny, as to whether it's needed, given that we're looking at the audited statement of accounts for last year.
Just to clarify, is this a recommendation, but also about the recommendations in the audit completion report on control issues? Just to clarify, which part of the audit completion report specifically?
There's the findings that you've identified,
Yeah.
and then if I understand it correctly, you've said you're satisfied with the answers that you've been given from officers about how they're going to mitigate the risks and address the errors and misstatements. So in our recommendation to accept it, we're just considering and noting it. I just feel like perhaps there should be something just to close off the loop of officers then reporting back to say they've actually completed those tasks, and that there is no strands left unresolved.
But isn't that within the management response?
Yeah, I was just going to say, no, I understand exactly what you mean. So there will be all the control points that we have raised. We consider these still live. So we have a management response, but we will, as we did for the prior year, significant control deficiency, we will then in our next report see if that has been addressed. If it hasn't, then it stays as a live recommendation. For that's for the sort of the control recommendations, if you like, that we've raised. For the unadjusted and adjusted misstatements, they are exactly that. So the adjusted ones in the version of the accounts that you have been adjusted for. The unadjusted ones, there are some situations where they would roll forward, but not in the case of some of the ones that we have, because they will be corrected by this time next year in the next balance sheet date because of their very nature. But that can depend on what the error is. And in any case, they are cumulatively they are not material to the mistake. To the statement of accounts as a whole. So hopefully that addresses your question.
Yeah, just one clarifying point then. When will you next be reporting back to us? In 12 months' time, or is there an interim report?
It's likely to be in 12 months' time because our focus is the statement of accounts. So when those next produced for the next 12-month period, we come and audit those.
But it does seem to me, I take your point, Charles, but it does seem to me that as inherent within the paperwork, it's an ongoing situation, and there is a requirement on officers to implement the requirements that come from the auditors, and that what members are being asked to do is to note that there are some issues, those have been raised, solutions have been identified and are being implemented. And in the longer term, we will be informed as to whether or not that was successful.
Yeah, in the past though, some of those haven't happened, so then we've been told at the following audit that it's not been on target, so the first we hear that it's not been done is on the follow-up, not in the period in between. I guess that's my point, but I'm happy to pack.
Yeah, I take your point, but I think that responsibility for coming back to us lies with the auditors, and that's where we have to take that from. I mean, I think there's a point beyond which, well, we have to trust officers to implement the required responses, and then in 12 months' time or whatever, if it hasn't happened, then I think is the legitimate time to say, why not? What's going on here? And that ought to be raised by the auditors as well, bringing it to members' attention. Sinead?
Yeah, I take your point, Charles, and I suppose if we were a bigger authority, we would have, as the ongoing discussion on an audit committee where you would bring these sorts of follow-ups back to an audit committee. I'm happy to do a mid-year report to say what was on the recommendations and bring back to say where we're up to do a short paper on that, if you would feel more comfortable with that. Because we've already implemented all the recommendations already, and it's only about 3 weeks later. We don't sit on things in my team, we just get on with it.
Well, Chair, that would be my preference.
Yes, okay.
I just feel uncomfortable having loose strands, and there's not an awareness of where they're at until the auditor says it's not happened. Nothing's happened for 12 months, and that's the first that you hear of it. Whereas there'll be that understanding within officers. So I think there is a responsibility on the external auditors, but there's also the responsibility within the management team, and then to implement it or flag it up. And if there's delays, barriers, issues, obstacles, to explain that.
Yep, okay. In order to make you feel more comfortable, Charles, I suggest we take up Sinead's offer of an update report in due course. Yep, okay. Right, Ginny Priestley.
Oh, just following on from Charles's point, so will that become one of the recommendations?
Yeah.
Yep, there's no reason why it shouldn't be.
We can add an additional
I
recommendation.
would advise against putting an actual date, a calendaric date, but suggesting a...
Yeah, we can put a 4.5 in to say for members to note that a mid-year report.
4.5.
Yeah.
We've got 5 already on 13.
Oh, sorry, I've got 2 2s. 4.6.
Yep, 4.6.
Sorry, a 6.
Yep.
To say that the Chief Financial Officer will bring a mid-year report to report progress with the external auditor's recommendations.
Okay.
In the report.
Is that acceptable? That's okay with you, Sinead and Jenny? In that case, it would come to authority, yes. So, are there any other questions or comments, members? If not, subject to the addition of that recommendation, which is being typed up now.
Yes.
So, just for members' benefit, to remind them of the wording, if we can outrun Angela's typing skills.
No pressure, Angela.
No. But we're all looking at you.
Whilst Angela's doing that, can I just say thank you to Sinead and her team for managing what's a really difficult operation. So thank you, and the clarity that you bring as well.
And I'd thank auditors as well for their work, not least with the alacrity with which this report has been produced.
Yeah, we do have a really good audit team, and we are a really small finance team, but we're audited like a big council. It's very intense. So I'd just like to thank Gemma on my team, who has primarily done a lot of the background work on this. So I just wanted to call her out because she's amazing.
Right. Well, once the plaudits. Oh, sorry, Andy. Andy Nash.
Just interested whether the new finance system has had an impact on your ability to deliver this sooner.
I'd like to think it's the new finance team alongside the system.
And their use of the tools, Andy.
I think last year we were very, very new. We started right at year end, so it was unhelpful. And this year we've had a full year. It's all our numbers. It's a new system that's been there for a full year. The system is good. The system is helping us push things through quicker. And then we've had obviously the same auditors in Mazars as well, which really helps because they understand the Peak District and our niches and how we work. So we've had a nice 10 weeks working very closely alongside them.
Okay. Thanks, Sinead. Plaudit time over. Just for members' benefit, the proposed recommendation 4.6, point 6, is that the Chief Finance Officer will bring back a mid-year report to full authority to report on progress with the actions detailed within the external auditor's audit completion report. I think that reflects, yeah, thumbs up from Charles, thank you. Can I have someone to move? Charles, thank you, move it. And Martin Beer has seconded. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Just 2. Thank you very much, members. It's 11:30. I thank you, Jenny and Sinead. I propose a 10-minute comfort break, members. We'll try to reconvene at 20 to 12. So thank you. Sorry, Matt, for delaying your performance. missing Martin. Oh, Martin's there. Where's Charlotte? Oh, Charlotte's there, yep.
We need Nick Adams.
He's just gone out. You coming back? Don't mean to keep members on tenterhooks, just waiting. Yeah, for 2 members. Mike, did you see Nick? Nick Adams outside? Yeah, he just went in. Oh, right, okay. In that case, members, you can wait on for a few moments more. The return of the prodigal. Are we live? Yeah, we'll put him. Yeah, okay, I think we'd better start, members. We've still got things to progress. So we move on to item 14 then, more to the future report on AMP8. Matt Scott Campbell is here are there any updates to the report, Matt?
Thanks, morning committee. Just a couple of updates to the version you will have seen. Firstly, just a little bit on why this is before this committee rather than Resources Committee, where it ordinarily and naturally sits. That was about reasons of timescales. It wasn't possible to get a report in time with some of the negotiations that we were having with partners. And so I want to thank Charles for being flexible around that, and for this group for allowing me to bring it to yourselves. And slightly different if you have a printed version of this. Under the recommendations, I apologise, the auto numbering on the last recommendation in there seemed to have fallen off. So the last point should be 4.4, that projects be monitored by this committee or such other group as may be appointed with the same remit. When it says this committee, that is also referring to Resources Committee.
Got the correct wording on
and
the
it's
screen.
correct on the screen. Okay.
Thank you, Matt. Any comments or questions, members? Patrick Brady, then Ken Rustich.
Sorry, Chairman, this is terribly pedantic, but I'm trying to understand the resolutions as they're put together. I'm going to guess, actually, there's also another numbering problem, which is that the line that starts off approval of the terms is probably a separate numbered paragraph. But I'm trying to understand what 4.3 means. Because we delegate to the authority's solicitor the entering into contracts. And then it says that the authority may enter into, well, I mean, that's a statement of fact. The authority may enter. I mean, we don't need authority to enter, but somebody else does need authority to enter. And I'm trying to work out what exactly that means. And then when it comes on to 4.4, as it will be, the projects be monitored. I'm not sure what that means. I think we probably mean, I mean, that might be put another way around. It might read something like that a report be made annually to X place with progress on the scheme or something of that sort. I'm not sure what's being asked for there.
Well, I think there's a number of projects, and they are usually monitored by Resources Committee, but I'll leave that to... perhaps Angela picks up on your first point and Matt on the second point.
Yeah, so with regard to the recommendations 4.2 and 4.3, you're right, the drafting's clunky there. I think they could have just been into one. The intention behind it is that we have two different sets of agreements, if you like. We have funding agreements with the funders and third parties, and then we have contracts with contractors who are coming on to do actual works. Those could just be put together. Essentially, they're all going to go through the legal team and they're all going to be signed by me. So I'm happy to incorporate 4.2 and 4.3 to include the funding agreements, third-party agreements and any contracts in line. And we do link that into our procurement standing orders because, of course, any contracts will need to go through the proper procurement process or be appointed through a framework in line with standing orders.
And does that mean that the person exercising these powers would still seek member approval if the contract is over a certain amount? Or are you intending to, I don't have a problem with it, I just want to be clear about it, or are you intending to override that requirement?
This overrides that by recommendation 1.
Okay, so are you going to suggest word? Because the alternative to rejigging the recommendations as they stand, I would suggest, is that on the back of that explanation, Patrick, does that help with your understanding? And although Angela has said they might be clunky, rather than now trying to amalgamate things, is the explanation sufficient?
I'm happy with the general direction, Chairman. I'm sure Angela will be able to draft it in a way that makes perfect sense.
I'm sure she should. It's no pressure again by the seam of it.
I could answer in relation to the projects as well, just to assist. This approval in number 1, recommendation 1, is an umbrella approval. So for the full 25 million, and from that Matt and his team will draw down onto a number of different projects under that, which is why the reference to projects is there will be several things that are paid for from that amount. So it's like an umbrella.
What are we asking for here? Is it a periodic report which says we have done these projects and this is what it's cost, or is it something else?
Yeah. Matt?
Thanks. So I think the reference to 4.4 as it is with the monitoring was put in there because last year there was a group set up, audit, project and budget risk monitoring group. And that was the first time I think that was used, and it was there so that committee could stay in touch with those projects and looking over them at the committee level. Aside from that, myself and the programme team at Malls of the Future manage and have oversight over those projects, as indeed do heads of services, and those projects are all subject to internal and external audits as well. So that was about committee having that oversight, and at the time that particular one was drafted, that group was moved, or the setup of that group was due to be have monitoring by Resources Committee.
Yeah, but what it means is that from time to time, or whatever intervals are appropriate, reports will come to Resources Committee for their information and monitoring of the progress.
And I think that was TBC. So the previous group asked us to attend at periodic intervals to give them an update on projects. So it could either be that or reports, whichever the committee decides.
Yeah. 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 Indeed. Janet Dugdale.
Laws for the Future also report annually to Resources Committee anyway. We used to see their forward plans and progress reports on an annual basis. So I assume this would be part of that, and any specific project over the threshold in terms of spend would be coming there as per the procurement procedures.
And I would imagine as different projects have different completion times or different mid-term reporting requirements, then over and above that general annual report, there would be specific reports as and when appropriate or needed for the individual projects. And as this 4.4 indicates, the projects will be monitored by Resources Committee, which necessarily, I would suggest, means a report from time to time needs to come to Resources Committee. That's my understanding, and it's nodded by the head of law, so it is gospel. Okay.
We used to see quite a lot from Moors for the Future when it was Programmes and Resources Committee.
And I suspect Resources Committee will still be seeing quite a lot from Moors for the Future. Ken Rustage.
Yeah, Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I support this as going to Resources Committee. I mean, what we're getting down to, these are very important projects, the MFPP, and specifically what we're talking about is the Sfagnum Mosque. In the Dark Peak particularly, that the land has been severely denuded, over hundreds of years. I think probably most of it from the Lancashire cotton industry, and it existed, all the smoke coming down there. So I think, I'm right in saying, was it Sheffield University was doing something up on the Snake Pass, and they were getting some projects. Then over near Buxton, I think it's at Liverpool University now, where they're actually doing experiments. Obviously they've got the issue of climate change, which could affect this, but I think I'm correct in saying that's what we've got there when they're using this. But at the end of it, it's these water companies, it's their interest, because once we restore the peat to that state, with the caveat of possible climate change, that will hold the water, and that's going to be better for everyone. So I think I support this. I think it's a really good idea. Am I correct in what I've said there?
Yep.
Yes, you are. And indeed, we're doing research ourselves around the recolonisation success and speed of Sfagnum Moss. And what's really great about this level of commitment coming from water company partners is, their primary interest is around the best raw water quality coming from their catchments as possible. And when you have healthy, thriving nature and ecosystems are functioning, you also have multiple benefits, one of which is the raw water quality. But obviously they fully acknowledge all of the multiple benefits for biodiversity and the other things as well. But this kind of level of investment does enable us to stay ambitious and keep delivering at pace. And you're right what you say about climate change, and that it's not slowing down any. And we're seeing droughts, we're seeing really troubling periods of droughts where wildfires are very common, unfortunately. And so working at pace like this is fantastic that the partnership led by the National Park Authority is pressing on to return this sort of habitat condition. And just jumping to that research part, we've got something we've called the Sphagnum Laboratory, which is an accessible sphagnum planting demonstration. It's underpinned by science, and that is looking at finding the sweet spot between economic investment in terms of planting density and speed of colonisation. So in terms of planting density and pattern of planting, to see how do we make this successful as possible, as quickly as possible. And yeah, it's great to have the opportunity to do that.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks for your comments, Ken. If there are no further... beg your pardon, Melandra Smith.
Hopefully you can hear me. Not very well today, but sphagnum moss plugs. I understand that's what's being used, is that right, to recolonise? And I just wondered, how many have we planted, say over the last year, or 2 years, and what is the success rate generally over a year for those taking? Thank you.
Thanks very much. There's a very long answer to that, and I can point you towards.
Make it a short one.
Yeah, I'll give the short one, but I can point you towards where the science is if you're interested. The number is, over the last 5 years, we've planted something in the region of 8 million plugs. The plugs have 11 species mixed into them, and that is so that they cover a range of ecological niches, so that whatever can take will take. And thrive, and you never really know which one of them it's going to be, because they all have different conditions that they prefer. Our monitoring has shown that the success rate of establishment over 2 years is above 90%, which if you compare it to tree planting, for example, which is 80% failure rates, those are very high numbers. And partly that's because we plant against a good practice planting specification where we're really targeting the planting into places where we know it's going to be successful. And where we see this success, we see some quite staggering levels of expansion. So a plug is the sort of size of a £2 coin, and some of our sites are experiencing 4,000% increase in coverage within the first 2 to 3 years. for different species. So hopefully that just gives a flavour, but there's more if people want directing to it.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. Janet, I overlooked you. Do apologise.
It's all right. I'm used to it.
It can only get better.
It can only get better. No, just this is. I used to really like these reports from Moors for the Future coming to what was Resources Committee, because it's always good news. You know, and here we're being asked to receive more money than we were expecting before, which is wonderful. Can I just confirm whether we will be able to do more in terms of, to go on Melandra's question, we'll be able to get more coverage, more sites, or is it because costs have gone up, we'll probably be able to achieve the same? And if it's the first, if we're going to get more done with this money, do we have the resources available to do it?
Thanks. Okay, so the money is more than we've had before for a 5-year period, and the thing to bear in mind is kind of where we have arrived at as a partnership in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So if we sort of rewind 20 years ago, we had sort of 40 square kilometres of entirely bare peat where nothing was growing. And that was within a wider area of 250 square kilometres where we had very dry conditions, dry heath habitat growing over deep peat rather than wet, boggy blanket peat, blanket bogs. And so we've now, as a group of partners, we've achieved something which is already startling in that we've transformed a lot of these bare areas. We have revegetated these 40 kilometres of entirely bare peat, and we've made a very good inroads into re-wetting and re-establishing the sphagnum moss over the whole 250 square kilometre landscape. But the point I want you to understand is that we're re-intervening over the same areas because you need to allow time for the habitats to establish and recover and move through what we call a trajectory towards functioning peat forming conditions. And we arrive at that point now where things are growing again. And we are now more able to get places wetter. We have conditions where we can put more sphagnum in than when we started. So we would never have started 20 years ago with dense sphagnum planting. There was nothing there to get it to, it wouldn't have been successful. But we arrive at this point now where from this point forward, our work is much more focused on creating wetter conditions where that's possible. And there will always be a mosaic of wetter and drier areas. That's a natural feature of bogs, but we also have a level of degradation, which means some areas will be drier. We have very deep gullying in places, and raising the water table in those peat masses is going to be challenging, but we're going to do what we can. And with the funding from this point forward, it means that the kind of profile of the work that we're doing is changing. So whereas over the first 20 years of Moors for the Future, we were very focused on kind of very large scale, almost industrial scale logistics to move material and seed to revegetate. Now we're bringing in much more plug planting, and a greater proportion of the budget in the next 5 years will be around plug planting rather than the heavy logistics aspects of the past. So in terms of resourcing, if this was £25 million funding to do what we were doing 20 years ago, we would have a very big resource pinch around staff availability and contractor availability. But with the profile of works now being much more about re-wetting and diversification with sphagnum, this is well within our capacity to do. And in fact, we have off the back of these contracts, we have been growing the team. We're now at 32.8 FTE, so we're as big as we've ever been. And we've focused the whole last year on getting ourselves ready to deliver at this level.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Ginny Priestley.
I wasn't sure if I should have declared an interest as chair of Moors for the Future, but
I think you probably should have. But this time,
Do
as
that
it's
retrospectively.
non-prejudicial, I would suggest.
I just wanted to support this, and if I can move it as chair, I would like to move that we accept the recommendation. Having worked with the Moors for the Future team for a few years now, I can reassure everybody that they have very, very strong controls on the way they actually operate these projects and how they control and manage quite a complex financial system. So if I'm able to recommend, I will, but otherwise I'll leave it for others.
Yep, that's fine. I'll come back to you with the modified recommendation in a moment to see whether you are comfortable still to move that recommendation. In the meantime, thank you, Jenny, for those comments and the confession. And Charles Greaves.
Yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations, well done on securing that extra funding.
Indeed.
And I know in some respects we're doing the water company's work for them, but just to squeeze another 5 million out of them is brilliant. Well done.
Thank you, Charles. If there are no further comments or questions, the amalgamation of what are currently recommendations 3 and 4, were they? 2 and 3 read that authority be delegated to the authority solicitor to enter into and determine the terms and conditions of all agreements and contracts pursuant to the implementation of recommendation 1, subject to compliance with the authority's standing orders in the best interests of the authority. I hope that meets your concern, Patrick, and that is acceptable both to the membership and to Ginny, who has moved the recommendation. As no one is saying no, do I have, in that case, it's now 3 recommendations with that modification of amalgamation of 2 and 3. So we have a mover for the recommendation, Secretary Ken Rustich. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Just the one. I'm sorry I missed you previously, Melandra. In that case, thank you, members. We conclude the decision-making section of the agenda, and we can move on to items for... thank you, Matt. My apologies for... Yep. We move on to agenda item 15, report from the Chair of Resources Committee, Charles Greaves.
Thanks, Chair. So there were 2 items that ought to have been on our agenda that came with this one, and one was the carbon management plan, and the other one was the Moors for the Future. We did consider 2 items in our open session. So one was around charging for toilets. So the decision on that was that there would be a fee of 50 pence for toilet use. It would be by card only, and that will apply to Dovedale, Millersdale, Parsleyhay, Tissington and Hartington. There was a healthy debate regarding prices and locations and payment methods, but that's what was approved. The second item then was in respect of reserves. So Sinead, the Chief Financial Officer, has been given the authority to do a bit of a reserves tidy up, which will see her have be able to manage much tighter control of reserves, how they're created and how they're managed and how they're reviewed. There were then we then moved on to Part B, and there was a couple of reports on Part B that I'll just very briefly cover. So we had the United Utilities Ranger contract, which was approved. That's on the agenda. It's listed on the. I'm not going to go any further than that.
Sorry.
It's all right. No. I get
combined nervousness at this end. Sorry, Charles.
So the Part B was United Utilities Ranger contract that was approved. The IT contract renewal that was approved, and then we had a mid-year budget, and that was on there because of the financial information. There's no significant issues there. It was just to note, but obviously the concern is over future funding.
Yep.
Panic over.
I'm just reassured there was combined nervousness, to be honest. But thank you for that, Charles. In that case, that's just a note. And of course, papers were previously published. And if you want the detail, I suggest you can go back to those reports for the detail. Patrick Brady, the next item is report from the Chair of Planning Committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Unlike the next meeting, where we've probably got one of the longest meetings that we've had for a very long time.
Indeed.
We've had 2 very short meetings, and in fact, there were only 2 applications before us at the last meeting. One theme, I think, has been about old building conversion, barn conversion, in the interests of conservation, but also the, if you like, the conflict between that and making use of these buildings as houses and making them into acceptable houses. And there have been, I think, 3 or 4 applications over the last 2 meetings covering that, with, I think, some, if I use the word strain, it sounds unfriendly, but with some sort of difference of view between officers as to the purity of conservation and members as to the practicality of living in some of these places. But that has come up as a bit of a theme over the last 2 meetings. The other major application that has come up, which is referred to in the earlier papers in the report, was a development for 42 or 3, I can't remember how many it was now.
42.
43, was it?
42.
42. It says over 40 in the report, actually, but there we are. Affordable houses on the edge of Bakewell. There was no case for refusing it. We didn't have the policies to refuse it. But although it provides an important asset of affordable housing for people that need housing, there were certainly some reservations expressed by members of the committee about the nature of the development, the way it was laid out, its relationship to things like car parking, open space, wheeled bin collection. It all seemed a bit too much in a too small a site. And I think there is a need for us, when we go through the rest of the local plan process, to make sure that we've got some thoughts and ideas about how developments as big as that should be dealt with in the future. This is a national park where you expect development to be of a standard appropriate to a national park, and I'm not sure that that was our finest moment, but it was an important development for local people, and for that reason it is to be welcomed.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I certainly agree that the provision of 42 affordable homes in Bakewell is a significant step forward in addressing the need for affordable housing. Yeah. We move on to agenda item 17, reports from outside. Oh, Nick?
Can I just ask you a question?
By all means. Yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Nick Adams.
Thank you. You referred to the use of barns and conversions. Is there a policy, you say there's some conflict between officers and members? Is there is there a policy, or is it all taken on an individual case? Thank you.
You can't have a policy to that extent. I think I think it would, to call it a conflict would be putting it a little bit strongly, but I think there's a difference of emphasis between the way some members view these barn conversions and particularly those with a very high concentration on conservation and heritage take a slightly different point of view.
I think he means me, Nick. But then, I think it's fair to say that planning committee does on occasions make recommendations that are or rather approve recommendations that are contrary to officer recommendations, and that's perfectly legitimate. Each application is viewed on its own merit. Different members will have different views. Different members will have similar views. It's as you suggested. It's each one is dealt with on its merit, and members' views are taken into account. The democratic process means sometimes it's a majority decision, sometimes it's unanimous. It's the nature, I would suggest, of local government.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are no other comments, thank you, Patrick. And we move on to agenda item 17, then reports from outside bodies. And I'm pleased to see 3 reports. I'm not saying that just because one of those is mine, but I would exhort members who are representing the authority on external bodies to submit reports of this nature, brief and to the point, but for members' information, as those members are representing the authority. I accept that some organisations don't meet or only meet intermittently, in which case, if they don't meet, there's no report to be made. But nevertheless, after that little dogma statement, we move on to the first one, which is Derbyshire Archaeological Advisory Committee. The only thing I would add to my report is that point 1 about the reference to section 245 of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. It is but, I suspect, or I think, one battle in the overall war to protect that element of seeking to further the section 245, because most recently there's been a report on nuclear regulation where the authors again made the case for scrapping section 245 on the basis that it would impede the development of nuclear facilities, without any examples of where that had occurred or if it might have occurred or in what circumstances it might occur. National Parks England, along with a number of other national organisations, have again made representation to government, on the one hand seeking any examples of where that had occurred in the nuclear industry, but also making the case that government's own commitment to the section 245 is contrary to the recommendation that's made in that nuclear report. Ken Rustage.
Yeah, two points, please, Chair. So I'm not sure that about the nuclear. I can't think of, unless maybe think of the Lake District National Park, you've got Sellafield and, what was it formerly, Calder Hall. But it just seems, I can't envisage, unless they're talking about something that's so sensitive.
I think it's best we don't speculate.
Talk about it in these means, and it's not generating electricity, I wouldn't have thought so. But no, my question really is about the Derbyshire Archaeological Advisory Service, and it mentions reports highlighted, for example, Creswell Crags. Mm-hmm. And I'm not aware this Creswell Crags actually in the national park, but I think it is really good. Have any of you seen that, where sort of like woolly mammoths used to come down and they found these caves, and they're very, very old. But and then it alludes to about the closure of a museum building. Is that within the park? Is it on Buxton?
No, that's Buxton. No, that's the Derbyshire. That's the Derbyshire.
Yes, the Derbyshire one, but it's around the national park.
Creswell Crags is half in Derbyshire and half in Nottinghamshire.
Yes.
The stream that runs through the crags is the boundary between the two counties, and it's equally administered, or rather has oversight by both county councils. Yep. Thank you. If there are no other comments, that's one. Then the two reports from Martin Beer on the Local Access Forum and the Hope Valley Partnership. I don't know whether there's any update or comment you wish to make, Martin? No. Are there any other comments, members? In which case, I think we just asked...
Can I just encourage members to look at the recommendations of the APBG, and if they have time to hear what Ben's had to say at the Local Access Forum.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further comments, I think we're just noting those reports.
Sorry, Chair, just a real quick one on the point 2. The steel cotton trail was launched in October. So, is that steel cotton trade? It's interesting why you call it that. Is it like Sheffield Steel? It used to be a cotton industry.
Yeah, that's the whole. That's the whole point.
That's one. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I've not seen that.
Yep. Okay, we just asked to note those reports, so just have a show of hands to note that we've noted them. Thank you, members. We're now having to move on to part B of the agenda, and there is a draft motion that the public be excluded, which is in your paperwork. Can I have a Charles, thank you, seconded, Janet Dugdale, thank you. We'll now move into